Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She touched his hand. Just a brush, 2 fingers on his cuff. But in that moment, everything went silent. Not in the room, around me. Laughter, glasses clinking, music drifting in from the other side of the venue. All of it faded. Because my wife just touched her boss's hand like it belonged to her. And he smiled. That calm, polished, boardroom kind of smile. The kind of smile you practice in mirrors, not marriages. I watched from the corner of the room, half shadowed by a decorative plant and years of misplaced trust. Nobody noticed me. They never do at these things. IT guys don't draw attention. We keep the systems running and the lights on. But I saw everything. The way she leaned in too close. The way her dress sparkled just a little more tonight. The way her laugh came half a beat too fast, too often. I didn't react. Didn't confront. I just set my drink down, walked out into the cold, and let the night swallow me whole. She didn't see me leave. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't an accident. It didn't start tonight. It started months ago. Late meetings. Sudden deadlines. New perfumes. Locked phone screens. She changed, and I told myself it was just stress. That our distance was temporary. But now I saw the truth, clear and clean under soft lighting and fake smiles. This wasn't confusion. It was choice. The choice to look at someone else like that, while I stood quietly on the edge of her world, fading. I got into my car, hands still steady. No rage. No heartbreak. Just silence. Cold. Dense. Controlled. And I made a decision. Not to confront. Not to cry. But to understand. Because before I act, I collect. I observe. I wait. And when I move, I don't miss. It didn't happen all at once. That's what I keep coming back to. The unraveling was slow, like a thread catching on a nail, pulling fiber by fiber until the shape starts to change, but you pretend it still fits. She used to come home tired. The kind of tired that made her drop her bag at the door, shoes halfway off, hair messy. No filters. Just a woman who trusted me enough to fall apart in front of me. Then one day, she started coming home polished. Glossed lips, clean edges. Eyes still alert. Like she had somewhere else to be. Like she hadn't spent the whole day at work, but was only halfway through something bigger. Something I wasn't part of. I asked how her day was. She said busy, but productive. That phrase stuck. She used it often. It meant nothing. It was a placeholder. We stopped arguing around that time, too. That was another clue. People think silence is peace. Sometimes, it's the absence of effort. She smiled less at home, but posted more online. Work parties. Team photos. Candid laughter with her boss off to the side. Always just out of focus. I told myself I was overthinking. Because we trust the people we build lives with. We have to. Otherwise, the whole structure collapses under its own weight. But trust isn't a virtue. It's a bet. And I had been betting blind for months. The late strategy meetings. The sudden interest in boutique hotels. The phone turned upside down at dinner. Notifications she never checked in front of me. And one night, while she showered, her phone lit up. A name I recognized. Her boss. The message preview was short. You were fired today. No emojis. No photos. But I didn't need any. Tone says everything. And what it said was, there's a version of her that I don't get to see anymore. And someone else does. I didn't confront her. Didn't ask for passwords or explanations. I just looked at the message. Then locked the screen and placed the phone back where it was. She came out of the bathroom smiling, wrapped in steam and innocence. Kissed my shoulder. Asked what I was watching. I said, nothing important. And in that moment, I realized. She wasn't hiding from me. She simply stopped seeing me. Once you see the shift, you can't unsee it. Everything becomes data. Every smile, every pause, every late return, marked and indexed. I didn't snoop. I observed. I didn't accuse. I listened. People assume confrontation is strength. But real strength is quiet. Strategic. Like debugging code, you don't rip it apart. You trace the logic until you find where it broke. She had a second email. I found it when a Bluetooth device tried to connect to my laptop, hers, but under a profile name she'd never used with me. A quick scan, a cached login, and there it was. Nothing explicit. No declarations of love or photos that couldn't be denied in public. But the tone? Familiar. Warm. Too smooth for colleagues. Small things. He wrote, I needed that energy today. Or, wish we had more time after the pitch. And once, Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. I didn't need the full picture, just the outline. Because betrayal doesn't always happen in hotel rooms. Sometimes, it happens in shared coffee, in glances, in unspoken compacts between people who pretend it's still innocent, long after it's not. But I wasn't going to expose her. Not yet. There was no power in catching her. The power was in letting her believe I hadn't. In keeping my face unchanged, my tone even. Letting her float, thinking she was unseen, while I watched every move. I started reading about her boss. Found his profile. His background. His family. 3 kids. Married. Still wears a wedding band that you wouldn't know from the way he stood next to my wife in photos. His wife's name came up in an old press release. I ran a search. Found her LinkedIn. Professional. Conservative. Exactly the kind of woman who wouldn't show up in social stories, but kept the household machine turning silently behind the scenes. I scrolled through her feed. Birthday posts. Charity runs. One photo of the family smiling by a lake. She looked tired, but stable. I wondered if she knew, and if not, what it would feel like when she finally did. Not from me. Not directly, but through something sharper than proof. Something colder than truth. Presence. Because I had a plan now. Not revenge. Precision. The invitation came by email. A corporate end-of-quarter celebration. Upscale venue. Dress code. Optional +1. She mentioned it casually over dinner, between a sip of wine and a bite of salmon. By the way, she said, we're doing a thing next Friday. You don't have to come, though. It's mostly work people. You'd be bored out of your mind. Her voice was soft, nonchalant, but her eyes didn't hold. That's how you know someone's lying, not by what they say, but by how fast they look away after saying it. I nodded, took another bite, said nothing. She smiled like she was relieved, like she dodged something. And in a way, she had. Just not the way she thought. After dinner, she opened her laptop and started responding to emails, still in her dress, still in makeup. Like the evening wasn't for us, but some kind of rehearsal. I sat across from her, watching. She didn't notice. People rarely do when they think they're in control. I already knew who I was bringing. It wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a threat. It was math. Her boss had made his choice. My wife had followed. And now it was my move. I reached out to his wife 2 days later. A brief message. Respectful. Careful. Not accusatory. Just aware. She replied in less than an hour. We met for coffee. No drama. No tears. Just 2 people comparing timelines, tones, instincts. 2 people who'd been living in different versions of the same lie. She didn't ask for evidence. She had her own. A hotel charge that didn't match any trip. A text with a lipstick emoji that wasn't hers. Gaps in weekends, glances too long at company dinners. I asked her one thing. Would she be willing to attend the event with me? Not to make a scene. Not to yell. Just to stand beside me. She paused. Sipped her coffee. Then nodded once. It's time he felt the floor shift, too. That was all I needed. The rest of the week passed like clockwork. My wife picked out her dress. Smiled more than usual. Said things like, we've been good lately, and it's nice when things feel easy again. I agreed with her. Not because it was true, but because lies sound better when the person hearing them wants to believe. The valet didn't flinch. Just took the keys, nodded, and opened the door like it was any other evening. Like the 2 people stepping out of that car hadn't carefully calculated every inch of their appearance. She wore a dark green dress. Tasteful. Powerful. A quiet elegance. His wife. Not mine. I offered her my arm. She accepted it. Not like a date, like an agreement. We entered the venue as if we belonged there. No hesitation. No urgency. Just presence. The room was warm with artificial light and soft conversations. Laughter floated through the air like perfume. Jazz hummed beneath it all, trying to make everyone feel civilized. We didn't scan the crowd. We didn't need to. They saw us first. My wife was by the bar, already half-turned towards someone else. Smiling, a glass in her hand, had tilted just slightly in the way she does when she wants to be listened to. And standing next to her, her boss. Not touching. Not inappropriate. Just close. She noticed me first. I watched the moment land in her chest like a stone in still water. Her smile didn't fall immediately. It cracked. Just a hairline. Then the rest of her followed. Her eyes went from me to the woman beside me, and I saw it. Not jealousy, not confusion or recognition. She knew exactly who the woman was. And in that moment, I wasn't the quiet husband anymore. I was the variable she hadn't accounted for. I nodded politely toward them. No smirk. No statement. Just presence. Just confirmation. Her boss turned next. For a moment, he didn't react. Just froze. But his wife? She smiled. Not at him. Through him. And I leaned in. Just enough for my lips to hover near her ear. And whispered something that made her laugh gently. My wife watched that moment like it was a car crash in slow motion. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. Because what I had taken from her in that instant wasn't love. It wasn't control. It was certainty. Certainty that I would always stand behind her. Certainty that I wouldn't be seen by anyone else. And now? Now the entire room saw me. Next to the one person she never wanted involved. The woman who could burn down her new little world with one sentence. But neither of us said anything. That was the point. No confrontation. No scandal. Just silence. And in that silence, everything began to fall. We didn't stay long. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Just enough for everyone to notice. For glances to become whispers. For assumptions to form. She didn't come over. Not right away. She couldn't. Every step would have drawn more attention. And attention was poison now. Her boss drifted toward the terrace, pretending to take a call. His wife and I stood by the drinks table, quietly observing. Not drinking. Not speaking unless spoken to. We were polite. We were lethal. A few coworkers approached, making small talk. None of them asked the obvious. But I saw it in their eyes, the way they looked from her to me, then back to her. She was shrinking. Not because anyone accused her, but because I didn't flinch. There's something unsettling about a man who doesn't raise his voice, who doesn't storm out or lash back. A man who simply stops being invisible. She tried once, half a move toward me, then stopped. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was strategy. But either way, she stayed on the edge of the room, trapped in the very spotlight she used to crave. Her boss's wife eventually turned to me and said, "That's enough." I nodded. She was right. This wasn't vengeance. It was revelation. And it had landed. We left the same way we entered, without performance. The valet handed me the keys without eye contact. It was that kind of evening now. In the car, we didn't speak until we reached the corner where I offered to drop her. Before getting out, she looked at me and said, "He won't sleep tonight." I replied, "Neither will she." She smiled, not with satisfaction, but with understanding. We weren't allies. We were just two people done pretending. As I drove home, the night felt sharper, the lights brighter, not because I had won anything, but because I had shown her the one thing she thought I'd forgotten how to be: visible. And now, she would have to live with that image. Me, standing beside the one person who could dismantle her carefully curated world, without saying a word. That's what dignity sounds like. When it walks back into the room, she waited until the next morning. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just walked into the kitchen like a woman entering a battlefield she no longer controlled. I was making coffee. Calm. Methodical. She stood behind me, saying nothing at first, just breathing, shallow and uneven. Then, softly. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I didn't turn around. Because that's the phrase they all reach for when the damage is done. As if meaning has anything to do with outcome. She stepped closer. Her voice cracked. It wasn't real. I needed something. I didn't think you'd notice. That part was honest. She didn't think I'd notice. Because I was always the quiet one. The dependable one. The man who solved problems in silence, not in scenes. I just wanted to feel alive again, she whispered. And that's when I realized she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to herself. Trying to rewrite what happened before the guilt fully hardened. I finally turned. She looked at me like someone begging a mirror to show them a different reflection. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I said nothing. Just looked at her. Long enough for her to feel the space between us in full measure. Then I set my coffee down, walked past her, and sat on the edge of the bed we used to share. She followed, slowly, and when she spoke again, it was with less structure. Just words falling out of someone who no longer knew how to defend herself. I didn't sleep with him. Not really. There were moments. Stupid ones. Texts. Meetings. I thought it was harmless. That word again. Harmless. But harm isn't always loud. It doesn't always wear a face or leave a stain. Sometimes it's just the moment when someone who used to look at you with warmth starts looking through you. That was the real betrayal. Not his hand on hers. Not the message. But the fact that she smiled at another man the way she used to smile at me. And didn't even flinch. I stood again. Picked up my jacket. She asked where I was going. I said out. She didn't follow, didn't cry, because by now she understood. The silence I gave her wasn't punishment. It was finality. I drove without music, just rode noise in my own breath, steady in the dark. I wasn't running, wasn't escaping. I just needed silence that didn't echo off walls we used to share. Found a diner off the highway. One of those places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like memory. I sat by the window, ordered nothing at first, then nodded at the waitress when she offered a refill. Outside, the night kept moving. Inside, everything stilled. I wasn't thinking about her anymore. Not her words. Not the half-confession. Not even the moment she touched his hand. I was thinking about the version of myself I'd almost lost. The man who gave too much benefit of the doubt. Who confused loyalty with endurance. Who thought being steady meant being small. She never asked me how I felt in the last year. Not once. Because she assumed silence was indifference. But it wasn't. It was calculation. And now? Now I was measuring everything through a different lens. Not what she did, but what I allowed. Every missed glance. Every moment I excused the distance. Every time I chose peace over presence. I let her rewrite our story in front of me. And now she didn't know what to do when I picked up the pen. I wasn't angry. That part had already burned out. What was left was colder. More useful. Clarity. I thought about staying. About rebuilding. But not for her. For me. Because maybe the real power wasn't in walking away. Maybe it was in standing still, letting her feel the weight of what she broke, without lifting it for her. Letting her sit in the version of herself that made this mess. And watching if she'd actually choose to change. Or just shift the performance again. I didn't have to decide that night. I had time. Time she didn't know how to fill anymore. Because now the silence belonged to me. And for the first time, she didn't know what it meant. I came home late. No explanation. No text. Just walked in like the place still belonged to me, which it did. She was in the kitchen. Same table, same chair. Eyes swollen from crying, but her posture rehearsed. She had rehearsed this, whatever she planned to say. Probably all day. But I didn't give her the opening. I hung up my jacket, took a glass from the cupboard, filled it with water, sat across from her. The silence was heavy, not hostile, just filled with truth neither of us wanted to touch. She finally broke it. Said she was sorry. Said she didn't realize how far she'd drifted. Said she thought I didn't want her anymore. Funny how people only start speaking clearly when they're no longer in control of the outcome. I let her talk, not because I needed answers, but because she needed to hear how empty her reasons sounded now. I watched her search my face for softness, for some crack in the surface. She found nothing. Not out of cruelty. Out of discipline. Because when you've been made invisible long enough, you learn how to make your presence feel like a wall instead of a door. She asked if I was leaving. I said no. Not yet. That confused her. She leaned forward, hopeful. But then I told her the truth. I wasn't staying for her. I was staying to see if she would become someone worth forgiving. Not because she begged. Not because she cried. But because she changed. Truly. Quietly. Without applause. And if she didn't, then one day, I'd walk out the door, and she'd never hear it close. Because real endings don't always slam. Sometimes they whisper. I stood. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. She wasn't ready. I said one thing before leaving the room. You didn't break us when you betrayed me. You broke us when you stopped seeing me. Fix that first. We didn't speak for days. She moved through the house like a guest in her own life. Woke early. Cleaned more than usual. Tried to cook. Meals I once said I liked. As if nostalgia could patch over erosion. But I wasn't cold. I was neutral. And that scared her more. Because anger is still engagement. But calm? Calm is distance you can't measure. I watched her shrink in that space. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence she wore like armor had cracked, and what was left underneath was quiet, unsteady. But I didn't press her. Didn't punish her. I just gave her exactly what she gave me for months. Absence. While present. She asked once softly if I still loved her. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty. Out of respect. Because some questions are not bridges. They're mirrors. And if she couldn't face her own reflection, my words wouldn't change that. She started leaving her phone face up again. Stopped wearing perfume at home. Canceled a few late meetings without saying why. Tiny things. Maybe genuine. Maybe just gestures. I didn't analyze them. Not anymore. I'd already made my choice. I wasn't going to walk out. I was going to stay on my terms. Not as the man who once chased her attention, but as the man who no longer needed it. If she wanted to build something again, she'd have to do it from the foundation, with no scaffolding made of guilt. And maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But I had already reclaimed the only thing she took from me: my clarity. And that was enough. Because sometimes dignity isn't loud. It's quiet. It's choosing to remain while no longer waiting. It's watching someone realize that your silence was never weakness. It was warning. I didn't say a word. I just returned the silence she gave me until she finally heard herself and sighed. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.